All right, I suppose we'll get started here. I'll just start with my little spiel in case there's people here who haven't been here before. This is just, every other month, some of us sysadmins and, high throughput, high performance computing or, scientific areas get together and talk. More like big clusters, not really specific science. So, I mean, there's people from cloud providers and whatnot here as well. And we just chit-chat with about stuff and whatnot for a little bit. There's a link to the pad in the chat window if you want to add any topics or sign in. Otherwise, I tend to just go through the list and try to keep the conversation moving. So the first stuff, does anybody new that wants to share basic info about what their research is or the clusters and what they're doing with stuff?
I guess I'm a returning user, so long time no seeing. Hi, everyone. So in the meantime, I changed my job and I work for another research institution that's new to Ceph as well. So it's the first Ceph deployment for the ETH of Zurich. We're still actually in an early phase, so we are still waiting for the hardware. So not much we can tell you about the deployment yet. The only difference is going to be that it's mostly targeted to CephFS usage more than RBD or Object Store. So we plan to have some small use cases for Object Store, but mostly it's going to be a CephFS kind of setup. And not incredibly big either. We are talking about 16 nodes, a little bit dense, so like 24 spindles each, with the usual amount of flash drives for journal and write-ahead log.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I saw your name in the list of people. I thought, I haven't had him around in a while. So did you, at this new job, did you be the one to recommend Ceph because of your old job, or are you looking at
good
it?
Experience and storage system currently end of life, so it was actually a good opportunity to at least to test drive the use cases with Ceph, and so we are starting with a smaller system than the actual one that will probably be needed to take over all the use cases. But yes, I'm trying to see if it's a good fit here as well. It has all the right, let's say, on paper, it's the right solution. Of course, then the devil is in the detail. So we see performance-wise and mostly performance-wise. So there is a little bit of a question mark if we can fulfill all the requirements there.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Well, welcome back.
Thanks.
Anybody else who would want to share?
Hey, I can share something. I'm new here. I'm Arthur. I'm from CERN. And we upgraded most of our clusters to Octopus from Nautilus. It went well. And we disabled write cache on most of our drives, and it has a really good impact in terms of performance. I'm making the PR in the chat if you want that then added in the Ceph documentation. There is some nice plot showing some performance here. If you want to take a look. Yeah. That's it.
Is that, you said you disabled the write cache, was that on the cache on drives themselves or just like a RAID controller cache?
Yeah, it's you can configure with hdparm -bigw, I think. It's the right cache on the drive.
Okay.
Not something specific to our setup.
Yeah.
But yes, some drives don't have this cache. But yeah, if you want to try it, there is a FIO command, I think, in this pair here. That will, yeah. The trick is to do the FIO with fsync and not with sync, because this is the behavior of Bluestore, and this shows some difference with doing the right cache and fsync versus sync.
Yes, this is interesting. I'm just kind of looking through that pull request.
I think it's still to be confirmed. I guess I think they are contacting some officials of some drive companies to make sure it's a nice recommendation for everyone. But I think if you just run FIO on your drive and check this out, like if it's an actual performance game on your system, could be nice.
Yeah, I think the regulars of this group will find this particularly interesting, and could definitely be worth changing among some clusters. If the latency, the commit latency is 3 to 4 times slower, that's impressive. Oh, 3 to 4 times less, not slower, faster. So anything, anybody have upgrades that good, bad, or anything along those lines? I did see that there's now, ever since early November, a big warning on upgrading Pacific. That you basically shouldn't upgrade to Pacific from an old version because of an OMAP format conversion corruption issue. I was hoping nobody had hit that, but has anybody done that? I'll take silence as thankfully as nobody's had corrupted data. I don't know, in my experience, I took 3 clusters from Nautilus to Octopus in like the last 2 months. It was seamless and wonderful. I also did some CentOS 8 or stream at the same time for all the mons and completely converted 2 of the clusters as well to CentOS stream from 7. And a very seamless upgrade process with Ceph.
I have a curiosity. So the configuration that you're listing in the pad, it's your own, right? So I don't know if maybe I'm. Oh no, sorry, it's the Agoda one that has the. So I wonder like how people is managing the monitor nodes. So if it's like people are mostly co-locating Rados gateway monitors, or they're using dedicated nodes or VMs, and I wonder how that affects the upgrade process. Speaking of upgrades, so like since you have to actually upgrade them at a different time usually, that hasn't changed meanwhile.
Yeah. For me, I co-locate the monitors, managers, MDS, and the gateway all in one node, or 3 nodes actually, because it's three of each. And I just upgrade the packages and then restart the processes one at a time. What I've noticed, I think, is that when you restart Cephmon, it often the manager will restart as well and during the upgrade process. So like you're supposed to do them separately, but I know those two tend to go together for me. I don't know if that's a bug in the just a restart of how it goes from one version to the next, or if it's meant to do it that way, but it's never caused me problems.
So still working with collocation, you just have to have some extra care in restarting the services.
Yeah, as long as you don't reboot the whole machine, you can usually no problem doing them one at a time. Though if you run into problems and for some reason you have to try to roll back, then obviously it gets more complicated, but not much you can do.
In our environments, we collocate also MDS, Rados gateways, managers and monitors, but in some small clusters we collocate with OSDs also. But most of the cluster have separated 5 monitors with other packages.
I should say for myself too, yeah, for like my small test cluster, I also co-locate everything with OSDs as well. And that's, as long as you're doing one at a time, it's never really been a problem upgrading.
But I heard probably from CERN that they have monitors on virtual machines, not on dedicated hardware. I wonder if it's working well or there are some problems here.
I'm not aware of any problems, but I think it depends on the cluster. We don't have all the cluster on the virtual machine, but it works the same as physical, I mean.
Yeah, there is only another layer of abstraction where you could have some problems with hypervisor or so only this is the difference.
We've got our virtual images on the Ceph file system, so it would cause sort of a dependency problem. We co-host all our services, actual physical hardware.
Yeah, a similar thing for me. My overt VMs run off of my stuff cluster, so I really don't want to virtualize since it's a dependency on each other then. Well, to me, I view the monitors and stuff as a core thing that's not necessary to have physical, but it's just nice sometimes because it removes those dependencies and the external things working.
Of course, there is one important thing to don't run these VMs on storage backed by Ceph.
Yes, the key point. Run it on your other SAN.
Yeah, regarding the collocation question, the only thing that I actually don't have collocated is the MDS. I do had and still have some issues with CephFS with snapshots. And I had hoped that putting a dedicated MDS up with 160 gigabytes of RAM would be enough. But it seems to me that the issue I'm facing with the performance once snapshots are available is actually not a problem of the MDS itself, but rather some sort of bug in the Ceph kernel client code. There is a bug report open. There hasn't been any movement on that for the last 8 months or so. I'm actually quite interested in hearing from Mattia once you have running CephFS if you're intending to do snapshots, if you are running into any issues with metadata performance.
So the issue that go ahead. I was wondering if the issue is like metadata performance, meaning that you see like the MDS struggling.
No, what I'm seeing is that the MDS is still idling more or less all the time, so no high CPU performance or usage there. But on the clients, I see single thread 100% K-worker CPU usage, and metadata operations are reduced to 1 to 2 IOPS. So not 1 to 2,000, 1 to 2 metadata operations per second. So it's absolutely unusable. And I'm triggering that with either large rsync operations, or in my case, I can quite regularly trigger it with backup with barriers on our data, but only, so I have one specific folder with like 3 terabytes of user data from one user group, and only that folder seems to trigger that issue. And the issue then persists, so once it's triggered, it persists on this one client that has triggered it, until I umount and then remount CephFS. And it's only triggered if I have snapshots. So if I have no snapshots, everything's running fine. If I have snapshots and I'm using the Fuse client, everything is running fine, albeit with the typical Fuse client reduced metadata performance. The Fuse client in general has a reduced metadata performance, depending on hardware by a factor 2 to 10. But at least it's not subjected to these issues. For me, since it's the backup server, it needs to do metadata operations quite fast as well if you have a few 100 million files in your system. So for me, the only solution currently is to use the kernel client and just disable snapshots. I don't really like that solution, but once I have more than, and I don't know the exact number, but I think it's even more than 1 or 2 snapshots in my CephFS, I'm regularly hitting that issue. And that just means that the backups are effectively stalling, because if you only have like 1 or 2 files per second that are processed in the backup, you can of course not use it at all.
Could you link the open bug you were referring to earlier? Maybe put in the pad.
Yeah, I will post it in the pad, and as well as the chat here. So it's issue 44100. It has originally been reported with Nautilus, but I'm also hitting it with Octopus as well. If you take a look at what the kernel is doing at the moment, it seems to be running in some sort of infinite loop with snap handling. So some rebuild snap realm stuff going on there.
That's interesting, because we use CephFS and snapshots and nightly rsyncs, and we don't have any problems, and on Nautilus, and using kernel clients as well. And we also, the only issue we had with Nautilus, we got bitten by the directory fragmentation when somebody deleted millions of files in one go, and that brought our Ceph cluster to a standstill. So we increased the number of entries, but otherwise it works fine. And so our nightly backup trundles through a few, I think it's about 50 terabytes of data.
Yeah, I also have a rather small cluster, so I'm having in CephFS, around 180 terabyte or something like that. And I have this one group directory about 3 terabyte, and that is regularly causing these issues. If I back up anything else, it's working fine. It's just this one directory, and I've looked into it. I don't see any anomaly in there, so no huge number of files in one specific subdirectory or anything like that. Nothing. So I don't know what exactly is causing it. I can reproduce it, but only with my specific data set. If I try to reproduce it on any other data set, I fail. Which of course makes it rather difficult for the developers to tackle this issue as well, because I mean, I can't just give them, here, these are 3 terabyte of my university of one of our working group's users, all their home directories, here, have a go at it. I mean, it's not possible.
Yeah, that sounds rather frustrating.
By the way, just a quick note: the dearfrag things is fixed in Pacific, and that's why we want to have a beta of a Ceph cluster in Pacific with the snapshot enabled, because we don't have any snapshot enabled on the other cluster.
I mean, I could try, of course, upgrading to Pacific. With the recent number of bugs that have been hit in Pacific and have been reported on the users list, I'm actually not feeling confident right now to upgrade to Pacific, and I plan to wait until Octopus's EOL. So yeah, maybe I will set up my test cluster, upgrade that over to Pacific, and put that specific directory in there. That's probably something I can do, just to try if I can reproduce it on a Ceph cluster first, on a test cluster first on Octopus, and then upgrade that over to Pacific.
Yeah, but I don't think that this would solve your particular issues. But the thing about limit of dearfrags, it's basically if you remove. Yeah, I think if you remove too much file, there is a limit, and then you cannot remove any file whatsoever. I think it's that, if I remember correctly. And in Pacific, they remove this limit. So yeah, but yeah, that's not your issue. And did you try with a newer kernel version, by any chance? Maybe.
So I tried it with Octopus with current version, and it's still happening.
No, I mean the kernel version. Did you try with something new?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, sure. I'm running CentOS 8, and I have these issues both with CentOS 8 stock client as well as the newest LRepo client kernel. So that would be, I'll have to look, but 5.8 or something like that. It's 5.12. So I'm still hitting it with 5.12 kernel as well. Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe you want to try the newest kernel, but just to test. But I'm not sure this will help. But just to make sure this is not something that has been fixed or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm pretty certain that it's a client issue. Since I don't see any load that's abnormal on the server on the cluster, so I don't think upgrading anything on the server side will actually.
No, but I mean upgrading the kernel version of the client.
Yeah, I can take a look if there's anything newer available. Sure.
It would probably not solve it, but
compile it from hand, something like that. I mean, it's always possible.
Actually, yeah. At least it's an attempt to see. Well.
You said you were thinking of upgrading a test cluster to Pacific, trying moving your data sets over to that cluster and doing your backups to see if it still happened. So you've already move the same data set over from your primary cluster to the backup cluster, and it's on Octopus, and it still has the problem? It's a data set that triggers it?
I have not tried moving it over to a test cluster. That's one of the next steps that I'm going to do. But
Okay.
I see it only triggered by this specific folder on the current cluster.
Yeah, that definitely sounds worth trying. Just to see if it's a cluster specific or if it truly follows the data set itself.
Yeah. I mean, bit of an issue, of course, for me, but that's something that everyone probably knows is too much stuff to do. And currently, it's working as long as I disable snapshots. So I have 5 other urgent issues that have to be tackled first. And then at some points, in the meantime, I can tingle a bit with the Ceph issues.
Yeah. All right. Moving on. Anybody want to have outages or unexpected planned outages, or hit a bug that caused a terrible outage that they want to fess up to?
Well, we had one node die, and it all did what it was supposed to do, so we are quite happy with it. Now we have to hurry and buy a new node to make sure we've got enough space, but that's a different problem.
Yeah. Good to hear that nobody's had any terrible outages.
On a side note, is anyone actually trying to procure some hardware? They were having actually a lot of difficulties to come by NVMEs and such lately. So even like the cluster I was mentioning earlier is actually being delayed by the vendor because they don't have enough parts. I wonder if it's like, I guess it's like global, but I wonder if someone has been bitten by this issue as well.
I'm getting that issue too, mostly. Everything's on like double lead time, basically.
Yeah, in all my quotations that I'm currently getting from our vendors, they always write that prices are subject to change until the order more or less comes in. They will try to keep all quotation prices, but they can't guarantee anything. But I guess that's just the global situation nowadays.
Yeah. A couple months ago, I put in an order for a bunch of random hardware. One of them was a new OSD node, and like surprisingly, they told me it might take up to 3 months, but oddly it came within like 5 weeks or something. So in my experience, it feels like the vendors are giving you a really long lead time just to kind of cover themselves so they don't disappoint. So that if they do deliver faster, it's makes them look impressive.
Yeah, so we are careful of what CPUs we stick in our nodes, because it depends what CPUs you're buying, if you can get them or not. And I guess the other one, well, luckily there's no GPUs in them, so they seem to be the most difficult thing to get.
Yeah, it does seem to be component specific in some cases where, like, if you're using NVMe or SSDs or something, that's the main thing that's going to slow you down, while your regular HDDs, whatever 16 terabyte ones, can come in time.
Related to flash drives, so is anyone like actually running with at least a portion of the OSD data on flash, or are you also running with only HDDs, so like everything co-located in on HDDs.
We've got our metadata on Flash. That made a big difference.
It is worth to use NVMe devices with your HDD drives because you have better performance. For example, in object storage, the listing operations are 10 times faster. And you have to remember when your cluster are trying to reach some RAIDOS objects, the OSD needs to read from the BlueFS and rocksdb the OMAPs to reach the object on the Bluestore raw device. So each operation is faster when you have better drives than HDD.
I'm living in old times. I use HDDs with Filestore, so not even Bluestore on most of my clusters, and it's all on the journals on the same drive as the data. But in my case, we're more compute and network limited for how fast that can actually pull data than what the actual Ceph cluster can handle.
Kevin, are you thinking about migrating to Bluestore, or this is your decision for the cluster?
Every day I think about migrating to Bluestore. But I'm the weird one who's stuck in, we use RAIDOS directly. We don't use the gateway or CephFS, we're using libraidos. And Bluestore, they introduced this arbitrary limit of a file can't be larger than 4 gigabytes. And one of the data sets that we store has files that are, 4 gig is the low side. Sometimes they go up to 8 gigs. And we just haven't kind of tackled that issue yet. I think it'd be easiest to maybe like spin up a gateway in that cluster and then store those files in the gateway. And then everything else could continue to talk to RAIDOS directly. So that way I could get to Bluestore. It's just one of those, not a terrible problem, and I don't look forward to converting, 11 petabytes of disk to Bluestore anyways. So it keeps getting kicked down the road a bit.
So if I understand correctly, there is no plan to actually deprecate Filestore. Whoop, I'm muted. No, I'm not. To deprecate Filestore in Ceph. So, but I'm not aware of any. I was just wondering if they already have a plan.
I thought somewhere in like the Ceph month box, like I don't know if Sage said it or who, but like I thought coming up in like a couple major versions they might start deprecating Filestore. I could be remembering wrong, but now that you mention it, I thought I did see something in like, I don't think it was the Q release, maybe it would be our release that they were going to start thinking of that.
I think that they will try to deprecate it when they will replace the OSD daemon.
Probably when they go with like more Crimson.
Yeah, because the Bluestore is currently the default backend for OSD, and when they rewrite the OSD, so Crimson project will be production ready. There could be a waste of time to write interface for Filestore. But this is only
I don't think they do much Filestore development anymore anyways. It's all Bluestore and slowly working towards getting Crimson working.
I posted a thread in the mailing list in the chat, and Nia said that they want to remove it in the air release. That would be March 2023, apparently.
Yeah, I think this is, I probably saw this thread too.
So you have to migrate to Bluestore until air release.
I wish I had joined this Stuff Month session, because they say we discussed this and there were no objections from anybody on the call. I missed that one. I totally should have been on that call, so I could object as the only person. But that's just me kicking the can down the road, and I know this is something I gotta address in my cluster. Some new features that I kind of just threw into a list here was from the latest releases that if you're using Debian, it's now been built for Bullseye, which is nice. And Ceph MDSs are now a rolling upgrade. There's no longer, this is on Pacific. There's no longer have to, just turn off all your standbys and then, set max MDS to 1 and whatnot and do one at a time and then turn everything back on. Apparently you can just do a rolling upgrade on your MDSs now.
Do you know from which version and if it will be backported to Pacific?
The MDS upgrade you're talking?
Yeah, about a rolling upgrade.
Oh, that was in the latest Pacific release. What is it, like 16.2.6 or something?
Okay.
Well, they just introduced that.
Good to hear that, because stuff is it could be upgraded online again back.
Yeah, I didn't look to see if it was an octopus, but it was in Pacific.
We upgraded a week ago an MDS, but on Nautilus, and we have to stop some clients.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, it just occurred to me when you mentioned Debian. So, do they use the containerized version of Ceph on Debian, or is that sort of out of container?
I thought I read it said packages are now being built for Debian Bullseye. So I'm assuming that means the native packages, and I'm sure they also are doing a container as well. Well, no, they wouldn't do a separate container for both Debian. They would just. What's the base of the Ceph container? Are those like some CentOS base, or are they Debian Ubuntu based?
Yeah, I also noticed that Ubuntu also carries Pacific now, and we're kind of wondering what we upgrade to for our cluster, and if you're going to go for containers or not. And in a way, I'm probably tending towards using it out of the box from Ubuntu or Debian rather than a third-party repo, just to have that longer, so we don't need to change too much at once. Yeah.
Since we're talking operating systems, anyone currently on CentOS 8 who is thinking or has already done migration over to Rocky Linux or something like that?
I am thinking about it, but that's another thing I'm just gonna kick down the road further. Rocky definitely seems to have some big name support behind it now, and with the releases coming, so I'm getting more comfortable with the idea of switching from Stream to Rocky.
mean, if you're currently on stream, you don't have any time constraint for switching, so that's fine for you.
Yeah.
So
Oh.
I've switched one non-Ceph server, so just one of my regular servers over to Rocky just as a testbed, so that's working fine. And I guess I'll just move everything else, including the Ceph hosts, between Christmas and New Year. That's the time when I have no users on it, so yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, it'll be nice to hear how that goes for you in the next meeting, January. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll probably also report it on the users list just to get some output there.
All right. So I think it looks like, based on the colors, that Isfan, I pronounced that correctly. I'm sorry if I did not. Had a big question here. Storing billions of objects, you're getting a lot of outages quite often once you get to around 1 billion of objects. I think I see you on the call here. Do you want to talk up this issue, or?
Looks like common cluster problems because there is a spillover, some large GPGs.
Yeah. 3 data center multi-site, active, Octopus. OSD nodes look like reasonable.
Now?
Oh, yeah, I can hear you now.
Oh, sorry. Okay, I wasn't mute, sorry. Yes, so we would really like to know what's the proper way to store this huge amount of objects. We have a cluster and we just have only SAS, SSDs, OSDs in this one, and we have the index pool on NVMe drives, but it's almost impossible to bring back the cluster to a kind of working state. So at the moment, I'm trying to migrate out all the users to a temporary cluster because it's just completely crashing, falling apart like every hour, I would say. I'm not sure where is the bottleneck, what we miss that can cause this very big instability.
When you say it's like, what's happening? Are the OSDs constantly crashing, or your mons constantly crashing and re-electing new leaders, or what do you mean?
So what you can see on the cluster, slopes started to come. Most of the time, it's even reported in the Ceph log, like this specific OSD report it failed. And after the slopes, we are getting the laggy PGs. And this time, when we have the laggy PG and the slopes, it blocks already the I/O in the cluster. So you can see that the write operation, the read operation is just falling down from 50,000 IOPS to like a couple of hundred, or even it just go down completely zero. So we don't have any client operation anymore because the Rados gateway crashed. But why the Rados gateway is crashing? To be honest, I don't really have an idea. But what we can see on the OSD logs, like I think the compaction is kick off that time when the Rados gateway cannot write. But I'm not sure this could block like the I/O also. For example, the client tried to write to the cluster and Rados gateway maybe cannot write to the OSD because it's doing the compaction and it would block everything. I'm not sure, does it make sense? So yeah, I'm just curious, you guys, what you think. Because what I am trying to test it out now, I would like to put like 4 OSD on each 15 terabyte SSDs. And yeah, I will run some cost bench, try to push to my temporary cluster maybe 2 billions or 3 billions of objects, and let's see the result, but I'm not sure it's the right direction. Not sure if there anybody have some billions of objects, object store cluster in the core.
Yeah, we have, but we are using only one side. For one of the most important things was to increase a little timeouts on OSDs and suicide timeout.
What kind of timeout? Is the OSD op thread timeout or like suicide timeout?
Yes, exactly that one. And one of most important thing is the network stability, because when we get some alerts from this cluster, first thing we checking is our network core, because most of the problems are related to some instability in switches, and we are checking simply ECMP to show what are the times for them. And another thing is the compaction, because in big clusters you have more load data in your rocksdb, and compaction takes more time for them. And when you have slow NVMe which are not prepared for small operation, it slowing the cluster down. The one thing is to remember to check the health of NVMEs, because in such solutions like Ceph, when one OSD, one element is slowing down, then the whole cluster is slowing down.
Mm-hmm. And when you mentioned compaction, can you set something on it, like fine-tune the compaction? Well, maybe
Yes,
don't
there
push.
are some options which you push in Bluestore. I don't remember the name of a parameter. There are a couple of threads on mailing list about tuning up operating on rocksdb and the BlueFS. We changed the sizes of levels, because this is a level DB, to fit our partitions on NVMe, and we also changed some parameters according to workers. You should try. I'm thinking that you work running on default values right now.
The rocksdb, I have the default values, yeah.
I will check this parameter right now. Bluestore rocksdb options.
Yeah. This is like a quite long line with multiple options in this line, right? I think.
Yes. Exactly.
Yeah. I just don't know what what to set there, to be honest.
It's worth to look at it. It's one of our tweaks for cluster.
Can you share it?
We only have one site, not like you, three active sites.
Can you share your rocksdb options? Maybe after the meeting is okay also. I'm just curious.
No problem, I will share on the chat for everyone. This is from one of OSD servers.
Okay, this one I will copy and compare with mine. Curious.
I was actually trying to look for an issue that I remember some colleagues from a different organization had about having too many objects because of the index configuration. So the bucket that was actually containing the metadata was actually was not sharded enough. So they had basically gigantic to be fair, I don't remember the exact details. I remember it was a problem with sharding. I cannot find the issue now. What we were seeing, though, is that the BSD were dying, but they were actually going out of memory as well. It's not your case.
Yeah, the good catch, because there is another problem with when you have object storage about the limiting the size of single bucket. Ceph doesn't handle good the big buckets, especially listing operations. And in our solutions, we divide into multiple buckets, big buckets, and showing for clients as a one big bucket, but underlying storage has thousands of them. We are trying out cross the 1 million buckets per 1 million objects per bucket.
So yeah, we have two very big buckets actually, but is all of them properly sharded? So maybe I have one bucket which has 1.2 billion of objects. It's only one bucket, but it has like 15,000 something shards on it. But
in principle, it should already be.
It could probably be a problem because when you have too many shards, there is also problem with parallelism in Ceph.
Okay, so we have the technical possibility to set it and store it without any complaining from cluster side. So you can have a healthy cluster, but actually on the underlying problem is a big one. So it's not good at all to have this giant bucket, right?
In my opinion, yes. Right now, yes. We are planning to address this problem and see it and refactor the code according to some metadata, for example, listing operations to improve them for big buckets.
Okay. This two thing is good to know. I will have a look this Bluestore option, and I will talk with the users also. Maybe, yeah, the code need to be changed then. Okay, thank you. It's just some good idea.
I have a side of curiosity. So when you say that you have a 3 sites active cluster, you have like OSDs distributed geographically, like an equal number of OSDs distributed in 3 different locations. How does it work? Like
no. So I have now it's 4 DC actually. In 3 DC, I have the equal numbers of OSDs in each OSD node. But on the 4th one, no, I have less.
No, but because, sorry, what I was wondering is actually globally, regardless of the number of nodes, you have like basically a balanced number of OSDs on the 3 sites. It's not. It has nothing to do with your problem. I was just wondering how your setup is, or your cluster is designed.
So we have 3 DC. One is in Hong Kong, one is in Singapore, one is in Ashburn.
Right.
And yeah, have like all DCs have 7 nodes with the same number of OSDs.
Okay.
And we have yeah.
And then the cluster is a single one. So all this. So
It's one realm. Yeah, it's in one zone. I have only one zone group and 3 zone.
Thanks. Was just a curiosity.
Yeah, in each site I have 3 gateway, and they are communicating with each other. And trying to use this bucket replication feature, which is kind of working, kind of not. So the directional, if I define, I just want to replicate one bucket to, for example, from Hong Kong to Singapore is working, but the how was the name? Synchronous, it doesn't work when it's supposed to replicate the bucket contents from everywhere. I mean, from one side, from all side to the other side also. That doesn't work. I have ticket with the gateway Ceph guys also. So yeah, try this replication feature. I'm trying at the moment. But in one direction is working, the multi-direction no.
Thanks.
All right. I guess the last topic on the list here is the Cephalocon next year is actually still planning to happen. Or, I believe it's in Portland. I don't know if it's co-located with any other sort of event, or if it's just its go Cephalocon event. I don't know if there's like a KubeCon or anything happening the next day or whatever. But the call for proposals is open for like another couple weeks here. Should we submit? If they do birds of a feather, I would like to do one of these in person. That's always great. I'll see if I can submit that and see if I haven't even talked about if they'll let me travel, but I think they will now. Anybody have any the thoughts on the Decepticon or related to that, I guess?
Guess this for me would be a little bit difficult to attend. So, unless I can actually cluster it up or with some other events that can justify the trip.
Yeah, it's hard to justify overseas trip for just like a 2-day Cephalocon. I know in the last one in Barcelona, I think I only got to go because there's the Europe KubeCon was following it. But I'm sure they'll definitely have decent virtual options for everything this year. A lot of conferences have focused on that, learned how to do it well. Well, that kind of exhausts our list. Anybody have anything they want else for regarding Ceph or in some way to discuss before we wrap this up? All right, guess not. Thanks everybody for joining. We'll Next one will be in January. You'll see the usual emails, and we'll talk to you then, and enjoy your holidays.
Thanks a lot for hosting, Kevin.
Yeah, of course.
Thanks. See you in New Year. Bye.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye. Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Cheers. Bye-bye.